Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Well, I happened to catch the Gibson demo shop just before it gets posted to everybody's feed, because that is the best time to hunt the demo shop. I did a YouTube short showing some other cool guitars that I found at that same time. But yeah, if you actually want to get something good from that shop before everyone else, you have to just constantly refresh that page on a day that you think they just might do it. It's a lot of luck-based stuff. But today we are going to check out a prototype ES-275. Now, if you've never heard of an ES-275, welcome to the club. I had never heard of it either. But a little bit of backstory behind this is this was a hollow body model introduced in 2016. It just kind of, you know, plays off of some of the old vintage archtop guitars. It kind of borrows some elements from each and every single one, but 2016 was the first year for this one, and it was produced in Gibson, Memphis. Initially, they had a basic one and a figured, and then in 2017, there was a cool limited edition one that had the old pre-war Gibson style logo. I would love to check one of those out, and it had P90 pickups. But generally speaking, all of these had humbuckers. But in 2019, they introduced a Thinline version of that exact same guitar. Thinline meaning smaller. It's not quite as a full body. You know how we just talked about the ES-350T in this episode? Kind of like that. And that is the prototype that we're talking about today. A Thinline ES-275, but all the other ones got humbuckers. This was part of a prototypal run with dog-eared P90s. And so far, we've seen 3 of these things show up on the Gibson demo shop. So there's this red one. There was a really cool orange one. A different fan of the show picked that one up. And then there was also a natural one a couple of weeks ago. This was actually posted on Gibson's Instagram page. I didn't even realize that when I had purchased this. So for me, I really like P90 pickups, especially in these hollow-bodied guitars. So the fact that I could just pick this up, have a nice Gibson to review today, and, you know, it just kind of be a nice-looking guitar, that's a big win in my book. It doesn't really have any figuring or anything. And being a prototype of just a version of a different pickup, I mean, is it that special? No, but it still says prototype, so it's just kind of an added bonus for me. So my first impressions on this, it's very thin, kind of reminds me of an ES-335, except for we have more like the L5 cutaway right here. I would say it's a little bit smaller than that too. We'll get all the dimensions on the workbench. But if you happen to like these guys with like the trapeze style tailpieces, you can find those in the earlier runs. I'm actually kind of happy we have the stop bar variety because I just kind of prefer that because then you don't have the strings ringing. But this came out of Gibson Memphis, and they always have a really nice way of doing the aged lacquer on these things. Unfortunately, Gibson Memphis is no longer in production, and I don't think you can actually buy a 275 new right now outside of like maybe a custom order. But I love this fretboard. They always advertise that these have nice rolled edges, and I can definitely tell you, this is a very comfortable neck. Kind of hard to describe what it is. It's an in-betweener neck. It's got the rounded C neck profile, but it's like somewhere in between a 60s and a 50s. Doesn't have a lot of acoustic projection, but you know, it's okay for what it is. But what makes this one different from the hollow body version is this is more 335-esque in the fact that it has a maple center block, but they chamber it out to make it even more lightweight. And I'm digging the 3-ply binding. That's a new feature that I'm starting to fall in love with, especially on this one because the black portion is a lot more bold. But let's see, do we have any fancy case candy for this one? Looks like they took the switch tip off, great job. Unfortunately, nothing too special. It doesn't even say that it's a prototype on the COA. This is just a reissue one, but we do get the basic Gibson strap, polish cloth, multi-tool, and it looks like for an added bonus, a pick holder. And this is a Canadian case. So cool, let's go ahead and throw this thing on the workbench and take an individual look at its parts and specs. Inside the ES-275 are P90 pickups in here. They're dog-eared style, so they mount directly to the body. You can see the tabs. For some reason, these ones are cut off, but those ones aren't. But it's just called the Rhythm P90 dog ear, and in the bridge, the Lead P90 dog ear. Here's what the covers themselves look like. They're just black plastic. But inside here's kind of cool. Looks like a short neck tenon, and it's routed out just enough for if you wanted to install a soap bar style one, you probably could. At least get one screw in anyways. And here we can see the many different layers. So it's a maple, poplar, maple sandwich. You can kind of see that right there. Maple, poplar, maple. And then they bend that into shape, so it's got a slight arch top to it. And then it does have a center block, but it's kind of routed out right here for the pickups, and it is hollowed out in the center. You can kind of see that right there. And then of course we get the spruce bracing, which is what you're seeing right there. It usually looks pretty splintery like that. And we'll also see that inside the guitar, so let's go ahead and break out the endoscope. Okay, so going in from the neck pickup, where does this go? Can't quite tell. Maybe that's just there just in case you wanted to run your pickups in that direction. But that's just a gap that's caused by them bending it up. And then right now we're within the cavity where all the wires go, and this is the bridge pickup route that we're seeing right up there. So kind of running straight through that maple center block essentially. And we eventually get out of that and then can go here. So there we can see our spruce bracing all along the sides. And now we can start to see some of our electronics and wiring and whatnot. There's our F-hole. And looking up here, we're within the top horn part. So nothing too fancy up here. But definitely not a part of the guitar that you see too often. What's nice about the bracing is it kind of hides all those glue lines that we've been seeing on some other guitars. Now we're going in the other side F-hole. So we can see our little tag right here. It says ES-275 Thinline. It's got our serial number and everything right there. Oh, that's interesting. Is that like a little sound post? Is that even supposed to be there? I'm not sure, but there's our toggle switch. And it's a bit hard to see, but this is the rest of that maple center block. So it looks like within there, that's all going to be chambered out somehow. Maybe we can't actually see that portion. And then they've got like a bunch of layers of something in order to reinforce that. Okay, so as a quick recap, we get a center block that's kind of propped up by something else underneath there. It is all chambered out within that, but we cannot necessarily see it. We have an entire cavity along right here with the spruce bracing along all the sides. And then on the other side, we have another empty cavity with stuff. So pretty basic construction here, nothing too fancy. I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments going, wow, that's really ugly under there. But I have yet to see one of these style guitars come out of Gibson that's like perfectly polished. It's always kind of splintery in there. I don't know if it's they just don't take the time to make it look nice, because, I mean, who besides me takes an endoscope to a guitar unless you're trying to repair it? But anyways, our bridge is an ABR1, so nice and historic. And it does look like it's a true one. It drills directly into the top. And then the tailpiece is full weight, advanced plating incorporated branded. As far as controls go, 2 volumes, 2 tones, standard stuff, but we do get the rounded off thumb bleeders. And the output jack is located on the edge, which is kind of a nice feature, honestly. So 7.04 k ohms in the bridge. Our neck, a little less hot, 6.93. In the middle, 3.49. And no fancy electronics for out of phase or anything. And here's a quick look at this style pickguard, just your basic ones for these types of guitars. So moving on from our maple poplar maple body, we have a rosewood fretboard with a mahogany neck, so very basic stuff here. 22 medium jumbo frets with the celluloid split parallelogram inlays. We just saw that on the Kenny Wayne Shepherd Stratocaster yesterday. A little bit different here and more vintage looking, but I really like these inlays because you don't see them too often on the guitars that I mainly review anyways. Looks like the standard 24 3/4 inch scale length with a bone nut that measures 1.7 inches. That increases to 2.02 by the 12. First fret neck depth, 0.85 and 0.97 by the 12. The only spec I don't like about this guitar is they didn't give it the special truss rod cover. It's just the regular blank one. Some of these Memphis ones had a little bit more special looking truss rod cover on it. Some of them had the F-hole, but I'm just talking about the general style. But we get the cool Kluson style vintage tuners with the crown and the Gibson logo all aged over. Looks like roughly 11.5 inches at the upper bout, and the lower bout is 15.5. The body itself, I would say like 18 3/4 inches, with a depth of about 1 3/4 inches. Now keep in mind, Gibson sells all their demo models and prototypes as like factory seconds, meaning they have some sort of blemish on them. So like this guy, I see a small ding right there. There's some scratches on the top. I mean, it's not too bad, but it's not a factory 100% perfect guitar. The other thing I noticed is the nut kind of wiggles if you try to, so maybe that could use re-glued. I mean, it stays in put, you can't knock it out of place or take it off, but I did notice it wasn't completely secured. But other than some light picking scratches and handling wear, I didn't notice anything too crazy. If you are interested in purchasing this, it will be on my website after the review has been posted. There'll be a link in the description. Okay, so before we move on to the back, let's take a look at the binding on the front here one more time. Notice that 3-ply binding with that really large black layer. It stands out quite nicely, but then when you switch over to the back, it's just single ply. So that's the main difference I wanted to show here today. The back is constructed the same way as the top, maple, poplar, maple sandwich, and then they kind of form it into this shape. It's got a bit of a belly, but nothing too big, but you can see some beautiful wood grain back here. So strap buttons in our regular locations, one on the bottom, and one at the back of the heel on this. And here you can see just how thin the body is, so not a full-size jazz box by any means. And moving up our mahogany neck here until we get to the prototype stamp. Nothing too grand and fancy, it just says prototype. And our serial number here shows that this was made really early in 2019 on the 7th day of the year. It's kind of sad that the Memphis plant had to shut down because they made some interesting guitars, but we're still kind of waiting for them to get back up and running in the Nashville plant. I know there's been a huge backlog of Gibson guitars from there. I've got, I think, a 335 and a 345 ordered, so we can check out the new ones that they're making. And of course, we get the Epiphone Casinos sometime this year. But the last spec for this one to capture is the weight. And in this case, it's 6 pounds, about 15 ounces. So right under 7 pounds. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Quite some nice clean tones out of this. The neck is very jazzy. But yeah, if you're more of a rocker, you can do that too with the bridge pickup. That's really nice and bitey. But the middle still has that typical chiminess to it. Now let's go ahead and switch over to some distortion. This sounds absolutely fantastic with a little bit of dirt. So if you need something that can go from jazz to, you know, really heavy rock stuff, this is actually kind of your guitar. The only downfall is despite having the center block, it still does a lot of feedback. For example, I'll turn it down so it doesn't hurt your ears. Granted, I am only standing about maybe 7 to 10 feet away from my amp right now. But I find all the way at 10, it does that. But if I turn it down to like 7 or 8, I don't get that anymore. That's still plenty enough dirt for me. You can also use that for like controlled feedback. Turn your volume up when it starts to die. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Now that we know all about the ES-275, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I really wasn't thinking much when I bought this guitar just to do the review and demo. I just thought, it's a cool prototype, a guitar I wouldn't normally check out, but I think I'm starting to find I'm a Thinline archtop guy with P90 pickups, because every single one that I've touched, I've just fallen in love with. Like, I was kind of in a slump today, not really feeling guitar, but then this thing is it just puts a smile on your face. So, is it for everyone? No, but I think it can get tones that everyone can enjoy. It's just, it's weird looking, it's a bit goofy, it's not quite an L5, but at the same time, it's beautiful in the tonal aspect. So I would suggest checking one of these things out, even if you don't normally like Thinline or archtop guitars. I think you just might be surprised. I mean, I was always a Les Paul guy, but it's always good to have something a little bit different on the show. So Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed this little review and demo of the ES-275. If you're interested in being the next owner of this one, I am now selling directly on my website, so you can check out the link in the description if you're interested in purchasing this. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.